Hey, welcome back. Today we're talking about open source software, which is software that has its code publicly available on the internet, and that means it could potentially be used by you or your company in your next software development project and allow you to launch software potentially faster and save you money. So before we get into that, I wanted to give you a quick introduction on myself. My name is Doug. I run a software development company called Shrine Development. We're just north of Detroit. And one of the things we're known for is using our clients' money very efficiently. And part of our secret sauce is that we operate using this framework called build, buy, or leverage. And what that means is when it comes to software development, you have three options. You can build it, which just means write it all yourself. You can buy it, which means you can go buy a commercial solution. Or you can leverage an open source solution. And that's what I wanted to talk to you today about. So I wanted to give you a quick intro on open source software, 3 tips, run you through some of the pitfalls. So let's get started. Open source software, what is it? Open source software is software that has its code freely available on the internet, and this is opposed to closed source software. So think about the traditional project like Microsoft Windows. Microsoft holds that source code near and dear. You can't just go to Bill Gates and say, hey, give me the code to Microsoft Windows. It's just not going to happen. On the other hand, open source software is publicly available. And depending on the licensing, you can actually just go ahead and use it as is, and you don't have to pay anyone a dime. So obviously this is a tremendous advantage over building your own software because it's already written for you. You just need to integrate it. So again, why would you do this? It's pretty obvious. If the code's already written, then you don't have to write it. And so the way it works is that an open source project is traditionally put together by a set of maintainers. This could be a large company like Facebook, or it could just be a couple individual developers who are working on a weekend project. But they're launching that software open source because either it's a passion project and they just want to share with the world, or in the case of Facebook and a technology called React, which I'll talk a little bit about later in this video, they're actually doing it to sort of increase their mind share with developers so that Facebook can attract and retain the best developers. So yes, it solved a business problem for them, but it's actually sort of a piece of a corporate strategy to actually attract and retain developers. So Facebook's strategy actually benefits you as far as like you can go ahead and use this technology without paying them anything. So when it comes to evaluating open source software, I really think it really begins with like taking a look at who actually sponsors this project. Take a look at the open source project, who are the companies involved, what are the developers involved, and how are they actually using this project. So let's say, for instance, you want to use a project that is for QuickBooks, and it's an open source project related to finance. Well, QuickBooks being, Intuit being a financial company, if they have an open source project that was related to finance, I'm inclined to believe that they actually use it. Whereas if Intuit open sourced a video game of some sort, I wouldn't be so trustworthy that they're actually using that project. So it's important to look at who actually is involved with the project and how they're actually using it. The next thing I'll look at is the social proof. So outside of the maintainers of the project, who else is actually using this software? So if Facebook puts out a project, who else is using it? Is Google using it? Are a bunch of companies like Airbnb using it? Or is no one using it? Is it just a project that Facebook uses? This is important because it sort of gives you a clue. Again, these are all hints. Social proof can be faked, and this is not something that is, this is more of an art than a science for sure when it comes to picking these projects. But social proof is looking at what other people are using the project for and how they're using it is a great signal. Next, there is a website called GitHub that hosts all these open source projects, and you can actually see, are people liking this project? And then you can actually see how often is this project being updated. The more people that like the project and the more frequent it's being updated, typically the better quality project it is. Lastly, whenever you're using a project, you want to make sure it actually aligns with you, meaning Facebook could open source a project, but then your app could be so different that it's actually not worth integrating. So it's really important to ensure that your in-house development team or whoever's going to use this project actually agrees with the project, actually thinks it makes sense to integrate it. Sometimes if you pick the wrong project, what happens is you end up adopting a project that doesn't quite fit your needs, and you spend more time customizing that project than if you had just built it or if you just bought a commercial solution. So it's really important to make sure there's alignment between the open source project and what exactly you want to do. And then I'd also make sure your developers like the project. You never want to like force people to use open source software. You want to get an understanding of their concerns. And obviously it's better if you can leverage an existing solution than building it, but sometimes building it or buying it is the right solution. So let's take a look at React. React is a framework that handles the view part of a website, so the front end, not the back end, and it is open source. And here is the project. This is on GitHub, and you can see that it's liked by 145,000 developers, and you can also see here is the entire code for the React project. It is freely available to you, and it is important to check the license on these projects. There's a standard MIT license, which is considered sort of the gold standard of open source. You do want to make sure your open source project doesn't have a commercial license. That is something to worry about, and every once in a blue moon it does. But typically, that's why I was saying check the ratings and the stars. People don't like that model. So usually software that's open source but commercial typically doesn't do that well in the community. So again, you can click through here and you can look through all the code associated with it. So that's the sort of code part. And then next I wanted to show you what it looks like as far as doing some digging on some social proof. This screen's a bit cut off here, but this is some of the companies that use React. You can see Netflix, Instagram, Pinterest, Medium, Twitter. Those are some heavy hitters. So I would be pretty confident in React. And actually React is probably my most favorite project for this year, as far as like I really believe it's viable. It solves an awesome business problem and it has a great community behind it. Then I also would recommend you take a look at the docs for the open source project. If it has clean docs, nice looking docs like this, I mean, again, React is sort of the gold standard, then you're probably in good hands. If there are no docs or the docs are extremely outdated, then that's sort of a buyer beware type situation. And then lastly, I want to take a look at Ember.js, which is a competitor to React. If we look at this has like 21,000 stars. So it's just not quite as popular. And again, popularity is not everything. I'm talking about tips. These are heuristics. This is not ironclad rules. And then if we were to look at the companies that use Ember, it's not quite as popular, but look, I mean, there's still some heavy hitters. So this is another super solid project. But I just wanted to give you through, like, if I had to pick a technology as I was evaluating React versus Ember, these are some of the things I would be looking at. So again, just to recap, as you're using these projects, my recommendation is take a look at who's backing the project, who's using the project, and how does it align with your company needs. And then lastly, I would say if you really like an open source project, I would encourage you to figure out if you can help, either contribute your time and your energy and help update the project, or consider providing donations, because some of these indie projects really are sort of, the funding is broken. A lot of big companies will use the project, but no one's paying them. So again, if you get really into open source, please consider giving back. So that's my recap. Hope this has been helpful. If it has been, please give it a like or a share, and I'll talk to you next time.